Hey guys, OG Albini here, bringing you guys yet another tier list video. Today we're going to be going over Generation 4, the Sinnoh Dex, and going over each and every fully evolved / viable Pokemon that we can draft in the context of a draft league setting. So the way I'll be looking at these, if you guys haven't seen Gens 1 through 3, which, by the way, go ahead and go watch those, is I'm going to be looking at their viability in draft, their price point in draft, and their value in draft throughout all generations of so generation 6, 7, 8, and 9, and we'll be ranking them based on the value that they offer to any given team. If you guys do enjoy these types of videos, enjoy the tier list, be sure to drop a like as well as subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 5,000 subs by the end of the year, and it really helps me out, and I would really appreciate it if you dropped a sub. It helps us push towards that goal a little bit better. Alright, with that being said though, I think it's time to jump in. Gen 4 Dex is the favorite of a lot of people just because Gen 4 is kind of a lot of people's favorite gen. But I actually, at least in my head, think this is going to be one of the more mediocre Dexes, unfortunately. We'll see if that ends up being the case or not. But yeah, that being said, we'll jump into Torterra here. And I'm thinking... Gen 4's got a lot of shitters. I think Torterra has a case for maybe low B, but I think we'll stick high C for now. In the past, it's been a reliable low tier rocker. It's been very anti-meta. Check Pokemon like a lot of the top tier lectures, Coco, Zera, things like that throughout the generations. This generation, I got access to Shell Smash though, and I feel like people have been leaning a lot towards those Shell Smash variants. At least initially when it was first kind of dropped, that buff was kind of dropped, which is definitely a pretty cool set. I have noticed what I deem the Torterra effect, whereas when you have them on like Torterra, Shell Smash, or something like that, you pivot into something that lives one hit guaranteed with a Mirror Herb, and you pretty much guarantee this thing never really sets up, or the opponent potentially loses, and the opponent always in the back of their mind, like, Mirror Herb, am I going to get Mirror Herbed right here? Am I going to get Mirror Herbed? So... I think that Torterra, the Smash hits actually aren't very good this gen, in my opinion. I still really like the bulky, reliable rockers, things like that. We're going to go ahead and put Grotle and Monferno in D tier 2. These Pokemon are technically draftable. I remember back in the day I saw a lot of Monfernos. I've seen a few Grotles drafted here and there, but I would not pretend like it's an incredible pickup. Or it offers a ton of inherent value, but that's just me. Alright, next up, we have Infernape. I think Infernape goes firmly in A tier. This is a Pokemon in the past, a lot of people really deemed it as like a tier 1 or like a top tier Pokemon. But I think as time has passed, people have kind of realized like maybe it's not the best as your first option on the team. Maybe a little bit better as the third option or something of the sort. But still an incredibly versatile Pokemon. People know it for its Choice Scarf variants, but it's a decent offensive rocker. It can be Scarf, Band, or Specs. Triple choice, like as an option, is always pretty crazy if a Pokemon's good enough to do so. It can SD or it can Nasty Plot. You can even Calm Mind if you need to. And there's even like bulky Willows variants. If you're playing into something like a Weavile, you can check that thing actually pretty darn well, which is pretty cool. You also have, like Iron Fist Mach Punch for cool, strong priority, and Vacuum Wave on the special side. So always going to be a great Pokemon. Then we have a big Empo. I think Empo deserves to be an A tier Pokemon as well, for sure. Really solid defensive typing. Water Steel is so unbelievably good. In Generation 9, it got even better, gaining access to Roost, Flip Turn, and Competitive as an ability. It changed from Defiant to Competitive, which is so much better for Empoleon's skill set. It did lose Scald and Toxic and Defog, which is a little bit tough for a Pokemon like Empoleon, but I think the buff's more than made up for it. It was great in past gens too, as like a Rock Slurry attacks guy, or roaring and yawning things around, kind of being a good disruptor and things of the sort. So Empo definitely deserves an A tier spot. Next up we have Staraptor, which I think deserves firmly a B tier position. Staraptor is kind of one of those Pokemon that's like, if you can fit it on a team and you can get it in, and you can justify drafting it and bringing it to a matchup, it's gonna kill something. It's incredibly strong. It's just very hard to justify drafting Staraptor. And it is kind of always a choice lock mon, typically into a Scarf or maybe, and then obviously in like matches replay things that are slower, a Band. And it's great in those instances. And then like low tier metas, this thing is like a top tier threat, debatably bannable. But I think in standard, it's a little bit tougher to justify drafting it as someone who has drafted it before. Next up, we got Bibs. Bibs is going to go down here D tier. I mean, there's like silly, like simple shit that you could do, like simple shenanigans, but realistically, it is a barrel, and it is not very good. Kricketune, same thing. Gonna go right down here in D tier. Pretty terrible Pokemon. It can Sticky Web. That's about it. Its stats are really bad. And there's a lot of D tier Pokemon that are gonna pop up on this list, and I just know it. I can feel it in my bones. Next up, we have Luxray. I'm gonna put Luxray at the top of D. This is another Pokemon that's really bad. I mean, cool tool set, right? Guts is a great ability. Guts is not. It's strong, but it's so slow and it's so frail, and it's just hard to justify using this guy, picking it up, putting it on a team. So, I think D tier is fine for it. Maybe I'm tripping, but I think D tier is fine. Then we have Roserade. We finally have another A tier. Where is it? B tier. B tier for Roserade. I could be tripping. This could be A tier value-wise. It's an incredible spiker, and Passion 2 is really great offensively, too, with Technician and, like, Hidden Powers, basically giving it, like, a free Flamethrower or Ice Beam on top of its coverage, which was incredibly, incredibly nice. But as a spiker, as a T-spiker, as a Sleep Powder Spreader, this thing is really, really solid. Solid Split Stat, too. Checks a lot of the game defensively. Sorry. Ooh, especially defensively, at the very least. So, solid Pokemon. Maybe it'll move to A tier. We'll see as we go throughout this list. I could be tripping, but I could also be the truth. I could be completely right. Next up is Rampardos. Rampardos is going to go here in D tier. I've seen some cool stuff with Terra. I think Terra Rock sets are pretty cool. I've seen some mixed variants that are pretty cool with Sheer Force. But again, it just suffers from that syndrome of being too damn slow. It being ridiculously slow. And not very bulky, being a pure rock type. So, it's hard to justify putting it any higher than that. Bastiodon, though, I'm gonna surprise some people. I'm putting Bastiodon C tier. In Generation 6, 7, and 8, undraftable Pokemon. Terrible. However, I think that Bastiodon is unbelievably good with Terra. I think it is one of the best low-tier Terra options you can have. Whether your league does low-tier Terra as like its only captain, or your league does 2 Terra captains, you get like a high-tier, low-tier one, or does Terra points. Whatever it is, consider picking up Bastiodon as your Terra captain. Whether it be Iron Defense Body Press with like Terra Fighting Sets, or just being a defensive typing that checks whatever you need to, becoming a pure Steel type and becoming a Water, becoming a Fairy, becoming a Poison, becoming a Dragon. Whatever it is, Bastiodon's defensive stats are insane. It's a bit passive offensively, not the strongest, but getting Body Press was huge for a Pokemon with this much defense. ID Body Press sets are really, really annoying. Solid Rocker. I think this thing has crazy value in Generation 9, enough to bump it above all of the shitters in D tier. At least, me personally, I think so. Then, what do we have next? I'm going to just go ahead and put Wormadam and Mothim down here. Again, these are Pokemon that really just have no value, or not very good in the slightest, and I don't think we can pretend otherwise. I mean, a lot of this early dex is really terrible. It's really, really bad. Vespiquen, another Pokemon that is just not very good. I mean, there's, like, funny, like, T-Spike things that it can do, I think. I think it also can Spike, but again, Bug Flying, not very good, not very strong. It's going to go down here. Pachirisu is going to go at the top of D tier. There are some funny, like, defensive things you could do, like Super Fang Nuzzle sets. I remember back in the day seeing a lot in Gen 7 and things like that. But its stat spread really just does let it down big time. Next up, we have Floatzel. I'm going to put Floatzel in C tier, solely because Floatzel's offensive capabilities in the rain, I think, are really, really strong. It's really fast, especially in Generation 9. Wave Crash, Terra Water, it can be a big, big menace and be really, really strong in a ton of matchups, and really just kind of push through its own checks and do a ton of damage. So I think it definitely is worth a C tier slot, especially considering what we have in D tier up to this point. Next up, we have Cherim. I'll put the cool Cherim sprite in here. Despite that, it is going to be a D tier Pokemon. It's a Cherim. I actually couldn't tell you what this guy does. Never seen it drafted before. I know Flower Gift is like what, its ability, right? It changes in the sun. My favorite sun abuser. But not a great Pokemon. Next up is Gastro. Gastro definitely goes in B tier. You'll see this weekend when I play Gastro. Man, this thing is annoying. It's kind of got Quagsire syndrome where, like, if you're Fizz Def, you take whatever Fizz Def hits you need to. If you're Sped Def, you take whatever Sped Def hits you need to. But not the opposite, because its stats are a little bit middling. And something I think was great for Gastro this generation in particular was it getting Rocks and Spikes, which was incredible. Really, really solid pivot. Having 2 really, really big immunities in Electric and Water is also very, very valuable. And when you get a Storm Drain, you're not the weakest Pokemon in the world either. So I definitely think it's worth a B tier slot here for sure. Alright, next up, we got Big Ambipom. I think Ambipom definitely deserves a C tier shout. It's one of those low tier Pokemon that can always kind of really put in some work if your opponent has like no normal resist. I think it's hard to justify drafting Ambipom personally, unless it's like a Terra captain. Then I could see like Terra Normal, Fake Out, Last Resort being really, really powerful and really strong. Decent move. Well, it did lose Tail Slap this generation, which is really bad for it. But other than that, solid Pokemon, good speed tier for what it's worth, and it's going to be cheap. Next up, we have Drifblim. And Drifblim, low-key, this is a B-tier Poke. Oh, that's a Saravia. Don't worry. He's not going to B-tier. Drifblim's a B-tier Pokemon for me, man. This thing is incredibly, incredibly solid. We've seen, like, really cool anti-meta Mirror Herb sets in DPL with the set that Darkrai brought that one time, or the set that J-Bear brought against Pokeaim in BBR when he played in that league. which was really, really cool. Also, just defensively, this thing is incredible, whether it be Aftermath, Rocky Helmet sets, or Unburdened variants, getting off Crazy Strength Saps and Will-O-Wisps, and really shutting down physical offense. This thing could be pretty incredible, and there's always like the Mickey Calm Mind variants. I remember I drafted in Gen 8 and won my first game of BVR that season with a Calm Mind Keyberry set that did a ton of work. So definitely a really solid Pokemon in my opinion. We have Lopunny. This is going to go right here in D tier. I'm not going to explain it. However, Mega Lopunny, huge upgrade, is going to go right up here in S tier. If you guys haven't seen my ORAS movie with Lop, great ORAS Mega, great Lucem Mega, and it was even better in Natdex leagues in Generation 8 and 9, gaining access to close combat and U-turn in that like proverbial, fake meta, I guess is a way of putting it. But incredible Pokemon. Normal and fighting is already so good offensively. When you give it Scrappy and the ability to hit ghost types, it is literally an unresisted dual typing. Literally unresisted. So if we can position this thing correctly and we can kind of weaken in those like bulky psychics, which are really the only checks to Lopunny in general, it becomes an unguardable Pokemon. It's unbelievably good. And it has cool utility. It had Heal Bell in the past. It has Healing Wish, which is really, really cool on a Pokemon this fast. It's just overall incredibly solid. Alrighty, next up we have Mismagius. This is a Pokemon that I think definitely deserves a C tier shout. As a low tier Terra Captain, I think it's actually really solid. Becoming Terra Electric and having no weaknesses slash getting, stab on its electric moves is really solid. Great offensive coverage. Terra Stellar, I've seen even put in some work in some instances. Or even just general defensive typings like Fairy, flipping its, knockoff weakness on its head. This is really solid, even Terra Dark if you really want to go that route. But I think, again, it really does struggle in like offensive, damage output and things of the sort sometimes just because of its stat spread. But it's solid spread F pivot. And in the past, it could like Heal Bell and be annoying in that regards. And was a solid low tier Z captain too back in the Generation 7 days. So I think it definitely deserves a shout in C tier personally. Solid Pokemon. Then we have Honchkrow. I'll put it at the bottom of C tier. I think it's very strong. I think it's a little too strong to put in D tier, which is funny to say when Rampardos is down there. But it's also not as slow, and we have Sucker Punch priority. Honchkrow really does struggle though, man. And I think its move pool got super shafted in Generation 9 in particular, so it's hard to justify it outside of the bottom of C tier. Next up, we have Purugly. If I got Ambipom in C tier, I'm not putting an offensive normal like Purugly anywhere near that tier, personally. Decently fat, though. I have seen it drafted a couple times. I'm pretty sure that guy gets thick fat. I'm like 90% sure he gets thick fat or something like that. So, I mean, that's a cool ability. Use it as a pivot. Use him on. Skuntank. I'm going to put Skuntank in C tier as well. I really do enjoy this Pokemon. I know some people really hate it, but I think in Generation 9 in particular, I'm going to put it at the top of C tier. I really like Skuntank. Kurt's going to fight me. I really like it, though, a lot. Knockoff Sucker Punch, or knockoff this generation. In the past, it was like, Crunch and Dark Pulse. But we can T-Spike up. We can Boom if we need to. Helmet Aftermath. And Dark and Poison is such a good defensive typing. I mean, we'll talk about it in Drapion in a minute, but Drapion is, like, an incredible Pokemon, in my opinion. And I'm probably going to have that thing way too high for some people, but yeah, I think that Skuntank is a really solid Pokemon. Really enjoy it. We have Bronzong next. Speaking of Pokemon with incredible value, I'm putting Bronzong in A tier. I'll talk about tried and true defensively. This Pokemon is so good at doing what it does best. That's simply getting up Stealth Rock. You don't need it to do anything else. I mean, you might Iron Defense Body Press, you might set up a Trick Room, you might even Calm Mind. I've drafted Bronzong so many times, and every single time, it does what it needs to do. It gets the damn job done. What am I getting a text message for right now? It's 9:57. Go away, children. Alright. Next up, we have Chatot. Nathan, I'm sorry, brother. Oliver, I'm sorry. It's another terrible Pokemon. No, you do not deserve to be up there, brother. It's gonna go a little bit higher just because of, like, strong Boom Burst and things like that. We'll put it right here. I like this guy. He's cool. He's got a nice design, but I'm never gonna pretend like he's gonna go higher than that. Alright, next up we have Spiritomb. Spiritomb is definitely a C tier Pokemon for me. Another Pokemon that has like a great defensive typing. We have it in L tier right now. Great defensive typing. Really annoying in that regard, but at the same time, very slow. It doesn't have the same staying power as a lot of annoying defensive Pokemon that you really like. So, excuse me. Solid defensive stats. Terrible HP though, so again, it really does kind of hinder it in that regards. We obviously can Pain Split, we can Rest, and it's really anti-meta in old generations where we're facing a lot of offensive fightings like Mega Medichams and things like that. Like, it's a great Mega Medicheck, it's a great Mega Gallade check, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But otherwise, especially nowadays, its usefulness is a little bit depleted in my opinion, just because of general power creep and things like that. Alright, finally we can get back to some real Pokemon. S tier and S tier. Garchomp is just a tried and true Pokemon. No matter the generation, no matter what format you are playing, Garchomp is good and it's going to do its job. It's going to be a great Scarfer, great with a Life Orb, great with Swords Dance, great with Rock's 3 attacks, as Keegan would love to point out, I'm sure. Really, really incredible Pokemon, especially starting in Generation 8, where it got SD and Scale Shot, and gets a Pseudo Dragon Dance. It takes 2 turns to get it up, but I think that's okay, because Garchomp with Dragon Dance would be super, super broken. But really, really solid Pokemon. It got Rocks and Spikes this generation, which is huge, so great Hazard Setter. The Rough Skin, Rocky Helmet, like Tank Chomp sets are great, but also just those offensive, you know, Dragon Ground, I-Click Button sets are always going to be absolutely incredible, and I think Garchomp deserves nothing less than S tier. Mega Garchomp is similar. It doesn't get the benefit of holding an item, so no Rocky Helmets, no Yachi Berries, no Scarves, no things like that, but it's incredibly strong, and it's incredibly bulky. And if you were talking Garchomp with Scale Shot, this guy with Scale Shot is a top-end metagame threat. Obviously, that's not like an official thing because Megas haven't been out since Scale Shot got introduced, but if you've played Nat Dex in Gen 8, you know how good Mega Garchomp is in that metagame. If you play Nat Dex on the Showdown ladder, I'm sure you could also understand why this guy is an S tier because of that alone, on top of being a really slept-on Mega in Generation 6 and 7. Really, really solid Pokemon. Obviously, he's slower than Garchomp, but bulkier and stronger if they're both unboosted on items-wise and things like that, so really solid Pokemon. I think Lucario is going to go in B tier. This might surprise some people, but it's a very similar Pokemon to Staraptor in my opinion, right? And I think it's definitely better this generation with like Terra Normal and E-Speed and things of the sort, but it's a Pokemon that's strong, but not super strong, fast, but not super fast, has a good defensive typing, but isn't very bulky. Really, really requires that setup, and it's really hard to position that setup, right? I think Choice Band Lucarios are actually the best sets that you could run this generation, and in general, it's really hard to position an SD with this guy. It really is. I think you need to use that strong priority to your advantage, and just click a button, and really that's going to be Terra Normal E-Speed plus Close Combat and Meteor Mash. Really covers pretty much everything that you need to get. You have Bullet Punch, you have Vacuum Wave, you have plenty of other options, but really just play to your strengths. Click a button. Mega Lucario will not be tiered because this is an Uber Pokemon. He is ungodly broken. As someone who's used him in an Uber League, as their one Uber, really old series on the channel, you can go back and look. That was in Generation 7. It was a Wi-Fi League. UPO Wi-Fi, Season 2. You can go back and look at it. It's really old, but I love that thing. It was really fun. I had it plus, like, Garchomp, actually, and I had Victini, Reuniclus, Double Psychic, both of my Z captains. Super fun team. Alright, next up we have Hippowdon. As much as I'm not a big Hippowdon... Ooh, not yet. Not yet, Leafeon. Not yet. As much as I'm not a big Hippowdon guy, I think I have to put an A tier. Now, I will preface this, I don't think Hippowdon is good as a Sand Setter. I don't. Because the Sand Abusers, mostly in Excadrill, are checked and walled by the same shit Hippowdon is. So I find it very difficult to position Excadrill with Hippowdon Sand if Hippowdon is beaten by the same things that Excadrill is. It's really hard to take advantage of your Sand turns, whereas with T-Char and Gigalith, different typing, they can at least push through those, grass types and things like that a little bit easier. They might be pivoted into by them, but they're not hard-walled by them, like Excadrill and Hippowdon are hard-walled by the same exact Pokemon that are going to come in the matchup. So I think that stuff. Defensively, though, as a defensive Pokemon, Hippowdon is great. In old gens, it would just spread Toxics, slack off, it would EQ, it would Rocks up, it'd be, Edgequake usually as an offensive coverage if it had 2 attacks. It would run Curse variants and things like that, and it would whirl things around. Very simple Pokemon who's bulky, defensive, annoying, but very, very good nonetheless. Then we have Drapion. This might be a hot take. I'm putting Drapion in A tier. I love this guy. No matter the generation, whether it be 6, 7, or 8, I spam this guy. I draft this guy all the freaking time. Great speed stat, T-Spikes, knocks items off. As SD as an option, the SD agility sets with like the crit, Drapion sets are really cool. But really just the defensive typing of of Psychic and Poison is so unbelievably good, especially with an Assault Vest, and especially in old gens where you could Pursuit Trap things and things like that. Soft checking so much of the offensive metagame that we really don't enjoy. I love Drapion. This might be a personal thing. I'm probably going to get yelled at when I post my Tailors and Goons for having Drapion in A tier. But we'll see. I could be wrong. But yeah, I love Drapion. I think it's a great, great Pokemon. Alright, next up, we got Toxicroak. Toxicroak can't go anywhere above C tier for me, but I think it's definitely a Pokemon that deserves to be in C tier. Cool Mon on Rain. Water immunity is always really, really nice. Getting a little bit of health back via that Dry Skin is pretty cool. Great offensive coverage, and Poison Fighting is an awesome offensive typing. It's just a little bit slow and a little bit frail, but can also attack from both sides. Has good prio from both sides in Vacuum Wave and Sucker Punch, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, overall, decently solid Pokemon. It is, at the end of the day, just a Toxicroak, so it's not gonna, really go super crazy for you, but cool Pokemon nonetheless. We got a couple other D tier shitters. I'm telling you, people really look back on this deck fondly. There's some terrible Pokemon in this deck. And Carnivine and Lumineon are no different. I've never seen Carnivine do anything. I know John's drafted this as like a defogger before. It gets U-turn. So I guess like that alone gets to like move it up to like here. Go here. But it's still a bottom tier Pokemon through and through. 100% through and through. So yeah, we're gonna keep it down there for sure. Next up, we have Big Abomasnow. I do love me some Abomasnow. I actually really like this Pokemon a lot. I think he's really solid. We're gonna go ahead and put him in C tier, especially in this generation with the snow buff, making him really solid defensively. Getting Aurora Veil last generation was a big buff for this guy. And it's also really strong offensively. Grass Ice is a cool typing, man. It's really difficult to switch into for a lot of teams, especially with Ice Shard priority. And just having good and decent natural bulk. We get Earthquake and Earth Power for those fires that want to switch in our dual stab and threaten us out with a pretty easy KO. So yeah, I think it's a solid Pokemon. And another Pokemon I think is really solid and really slept on is Mega Abomasnow. Not a Mega used to be drafted super often, but I think especially in the context of like Gen 9 Nat decks, it would be pretty awesome. We have the big snow buff to our defenses, which is awesome. I don't think it's good as a snow setter for like a snow team, but as a standalone Pokemon, it's really strong, it's decently bulky, it's physically and especially has like a short Aurora Veil that it can set up, and it can even Trailblaze now, which is actually a really cool aspect of it. So I think Mega Abomasnow is super slept on. That's me personally, but I think he's pretty good. Then we got Weavile. Weavile's got to go in S tier, man. It's been a tough generation for Weavile, right? It really has been. He's been relegated to Burger Flipper because Meowscarada simply exists, is a better Weavile in every sense of the word. However, this is Draft League, baby. It's not OU. We don't have to. Not every team's going to have a Meowscarada or have the ability to draft it. You want that fast, strong, offensive Dark Ice type with knockoff and triple axle? This is your guy. You have Ice Shard priority. You can set up SD in some aggressive matchups, but really most of the time you're going to be boots 4 attacks, or boost 3 attacks SD, or like Choice Band, and you're going to come in, you're going to click buttons, and it's still going to be really, really good at its job. Obviously, like early gen Weavile was like a super Burger Flip with no knockoff and no axle, but I got both of its tools back. It's incredible in Generation 8, one of the best breakers in Generation 8 by far. In Generation 7 and 6, it's also really, really good. It's strong. Very anti-meta, and that Ice Shard priority being stab and strong is always going to be really valuable. So Weavile for S tier. I think he's earned it despite having a shitty generation this gen. Really quick before we keep going, one, drop a like if you haven't, sub to the channel. What are you doing? Please feed my family. Of me. And then of course I did forget a Pokemon. And this Big Munchlax. I think this Pokemon's actually pretty viable as like a very, very low D tier pick, or like as a D tier pick in general. Fun fact, Munchlax has a 100% draft rate in DPL Draft Premier League, the best draft league for our tournament in the scene, has a 100% draft rate when Spectrier is drafted. It's a great Spectrier check, not great at much else, and I guess it checks guys like in Generation 7 I saw drafted for like Pokemon, let's say like Blacephalon. It checked really, really freaking well. So there are niche instances in which it can be drafted, and if we have Monferno and Throttle on the list, we're putting Big Munchlax on the list. That's my DPL goat. But on to the next, we have Magnezone. I'm not a Magnezone fan. Hot take. I'll put it in B tier. I really don't like Magnezone, though. I think it really, really struggles with its speed tier being so low. Obviously, there are the niche applications of trapping like Skarmory and Celesteela and things like that. But realistically, those Pokemon are going to run a Shed Shell, or in Silly's case, a Wakanberry, or just be Auto, and Autotomize, and Earthquake, and freaking kill you. Or Corviknight is going to be Shed Shell, it's going to body press you on the switch, and you're going to take 60%, and it's just going to switch out, or it's going to U-turn on you, right? So I don't like it for the Magnapole shenanigans. I think it's okay as an analytic, like, breaker, because its Flash Cannons are really, really strong, but it's so slow, and that 4 times weakness to ground is really, really tough, man. It's really, really brutal, so I think that's something to keep in mind. I definitely think it's usable for sure, but not my favorite. Now, we want to talk about my favorite. This is gonna be hard for me to not put this guy in S tier, dude. I love Licky. Okay, if this is a personal Joe Biden list, not me trying to be objective and give you guys proper value for all of these Pokemon, this Pokemon would be an S tier for me. One of my favorite Pokemon ever. Debated making it a channel mascot at many, many points in Generation 8. He's not in Generation 9, so you people don't know the truth. But Big Licky, I'm gonna put him in B tier. You can't stop me. I love bulky normals that aren't passive. Or I love bulky Pokemon that aren't passive in any way. And having Oblivious as an ability as a bulky normal is incredible. Not being able to be taunted is really, really solid. Makes this thing a great check to so many offensive threats that might want to take advantage of being a little bit more passive. But in the past, it obviously isn't in Generation 9. We can knock, we could toxic, we could heal, but we wish up our teammates. And we have crazy coverage offensively. I remember in BBL one game, I was really struggling one season. I forget which season it was, but I was really, really struggling, and I lost a couple straight, and Amo helped me build, and I brought like a Choice Band Licky with Cloud9. It's also anti-weather with Cloud9. I brought like a Cloud9 weather Choice Band set into Jack. He had like a Groudon, and Choice Band went crazy. It got like 3. Like, it was like Body Slam, Explosion, Power Whip, Earthquake, and it went nuts. It was a really, really solid Pokemon in the matchup. I absolutely love Licky. It spreads Knocks, Toxics, Wishes, Heal Bells, all that good stuff. And it does so without being taunted and really being super passive in its own right. Love that guy. I would die for Lickilicky, personally. Absolutely love that guy. Next up, we have Rhyperior. I'm going to put Rhyperior in B tier as well. I think this is an incredibly, incredibly solid Stealth Rocker. Solid Rock is such a good ability. In Generation 9, when we can Terra this guy, he becomes a menace. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw in my game against Viz. The game was already over at that point, but I clicked Raging Bull on just a Terra grounded Rhyperior. So it was still weak to it, but then Solid Rock popped in. I did about 20% with my offensive Raging Bull. And it wasn't the strongest move in the world, the strongest Pokemon in the world. It was an offensive Rhyperior. It took about 20% in proc weakness policy. So I think those weakness policy sets with Terra become ungodly annoying. Really, really solid Pokemon as like that Rock Polish Short Stance Sweeper. But again, in the past especially, it could still do that, but it was much more known for like its Rocks 3 attacks variants, its Assault Vest variants, and things like that. Really strong Pokemon. Really difficult to deal with defensively, and really hard to kill in one hit. Like, really hard to kill in one hit. So, really solid Pokemon. Big Tangrowth. I mean, I think this guy has to go in S tier. This is such an integral piece of so many different builds in the past, whether it be Generation 8 regen spam teams or just bulky balance teams in Generation 6 and 7. This guy is so tried and true, spreading knockoffs, sleep powders, and Giga Drains and Toxics. It is unbelievably good at this job. Regenerator is the best ability in the game. When you give it to a Pokemon as bulky as Tangrowth, that can be that Fizdef Rocky Helmet regen pivot, or it can be that Assault Vest regen pivot and be walling things on both sides. It's an absolutely incredible Pokemon, and I think it definitely deserves to be an S tier personally. I could be tripping, but I think with the value that you get from Tangrowth at the price point it gets and what it offers to a team, I really think that guy is incredible. Again, I could get some shit from this. We'll see in Goons. We'll see if I'm tripping. Next up, we have Electivire. Electivire is going to go in C tier. Same thing with Magmortar. These are Pokemon that like have potential. They have crazy move pools and they're strong, but they're slow and they're really exploitable. I think Electivire in particular is really bad. I debatably want to put it in D tier. I'll put it at the bottom of C tier. Magmortar I've seen a lot more use out of because fire is just a cool typing, and it's not as easily switched into, especially with Boots being added as an advent. It's pretty cool. I've seen like low tier Terra Electivire go pretty cool, but yeah, not the greatest Pokemon in the world for sure. Next up, we have Togekiss. I think Togekiss definitely deserves an A tier slot. This Pokemon, tried and true, one of the best defensive fairies in the format, in my opinion. Whether it be Thunder Waving and Air Slashing, whether it be Scarf Air Slashing, whether it be Nasty Plotting, whether it be Defogging, whether it even be Wish Passing. It's a very good Wish Passer. Really, really solid Pokemon overall. Really annoying to kill. It's the bane of many players' existence with like Togekiss Jirachi cores. We talked about Jirachi last time. This is the other half, and it's got to go in A tier just like Jirachi did last time. So, solid Pokemon for sure. Next up is Yanmega. Yanmega definitely deserves a B tier shout. I think in Generation 9 it saw like a huge renaissance. It's not a Pokemon that was used very often in Generation 6, 7, and 8. Especially in 8. I don't think I ever saw Yanmega. I saw like Z Yanmega in Generation 7. Not much in Generation 6. And then I didn't see it all in Generation 8. But 9, with those Terra Bug Tinted Lens Bug Buzzes with the Choice Specs, you're killing everything. Or it's like a Throat Spray Speed Boost kind of variant with Bug Buzz and like Terra Electric or something like that. It does a lot of work. And I've even seen SD work twice. 2 times I've seen SD on Mega Sweep. Once in DPL and once from Kurt in a Smogon tournament where we were doing like a trios tour. He swept with like SD Terra Water. And it absolutely smoked through. So like the Pokemon is viable as an SD sweeper, which I think is really funny and goes to show how Terra can be a little bit ridiculous sometimes. So yeah, I think Yanmega is a really, really cool Pokemon, especially saw a big renaissance in Gen 9 and deserves a little bit of a shout out. I think Leafeon definitely deserves a C tier shout. Solid defensive grass, actually. There's a lot of teams that'll draft the Leafeon as like a really low tier EQ resist because their team really doesn't deal with EQ well. And it could Wish, it could Heal Bell, it could spread Toxins, and it could Knock Off, which is really valuable for a Pokemon like this that has like kind of bad coverage overall. We can at least force progress by knocking off leftovers and boots and, you know, choice items and things like that. providing value for the rest of the team. And I think that's pretty cool for it. And there's always like the SD sunsets, which aren't very good, but possibility, right? It can be used. Not well, in my opinion, so yeah. Next up is Glaceon, though. Glaceon's definitely going down here in D tier. I mean, I know this is Liv's favorite evolution, so I feel bad because big shouts to Liv. However, I cannot pretend like Glaceon is a good Pokemon. It's slow and it's an ice type. That's basically what it boils down to. But we have another S tier Pokemon. We got another S tier Pokemon, a big Gliscor. Gliscor in Generations 7 is incredible. In Generation 8 Nacdex, it's really, really good. And in Generation 9, it's also incredible, whether it be regular or not Nacdex. I think it's a really solid Pokemon. Sets up rocks, sets up spikes now, which is pretty cool. It U-turns, it knocks, it taunts. It really functions well in balanced builds in prior generations. SD taunt variants are such good stall breakers, too, for opposing fat builds, which is really, really awesome. Absolutely love this Pokemon. I think it's really, really solid. And if you don't like it, you're a hater and you're dumb, at John Jr. Okay, well, like coffee ASMR for you. Next up, we got Big Mamushka, Big Mamoswine. Of course, I gotta put Mamoswine in A tier right here. I mean, when I think of Breaker, Mamoswine is one of the first 3 Pokemon that comes to mind. Not the fastest thing in the world, but pretty darn bulky. And oh my god, nothing switches into Mamoswine in the game. There's not a consistent answer to Mamoswine in Pokemon. Defensively, at least. There really is not much that deals with it. We have Knock and we have Stone Edge, slash like rock coverage to cover for a lot of those matchups. And then EQ plus Ice is really just absolutely unguardable. Really, 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 really difficult to deal with over the course of the game. It's a great stealth rocker. We can Trailblaze now and boost our speed. Mamoswine can boost its speed and not be choice locked into Choice Scarf, but it is a solid Scarfer. It's great with a ban. It's great with a Life Orb. It's probably one of the best Life Orb users, and that's not an item I really appreciate too often, or really like too often, but Mamoswine definitely does it super, super well. And I love Assault Vest Mamoswine. Assault Vest Mamoswine is a sleeper, I'm telling you. You still pick up a lot of the 2-hit KOs depending on the matchup that you need, and you check a lot of the game really, really well. You're gonna check things like, you know, like I remember running, like, you know, AV for like Tapu Kogos before and things like that, but obviously Grass Knot, but you can take on Dazzling Gleam into Grass Knot pretty easy and exert some crazy offensive pressure. And yeah, just overall a really, really incredible Pokemon. Thick Fat has a great ability, getting rid of the fire weakness and giving it an ice resistance. And then Oblivious is great in current gens because now we're Intim immune and Taunt immune if we don't want to get you know, a rock stopped or something like that. But regardless, Mamushka is a broken Pokemon. We love this guy. Absolutely love Mamoswine. Really fun Pokemon. Hard to draft sometimes, but still really good. Next up, we got Porygon-Z. I think we're going to put a little bit in front of Yanmega, just because I think traditionally, over the course of generations, it's been a better breaker. I wish that Terra and Adaptability worked the way we wish it did. I wish the multiplier stacked a little bit more like we thought it would, because this guy would be insane with Terra Normal. But regardless, it's still really strong. It's still really good with Terra. Terra Ice, Terra Electric is really, really solid. Or even Terra Ghost, right? And flipping our weaknesses. But with a nasty plot and agility, we can sweep the game. We can be Scarf, you know, Revenge Killer. We can be a Choice Specs Breaker and just click Adaptability, boosted Tri Attack, and kill things. Really, really solid Pokemon. Really strong. Pushes through a lot of its checks. And it's really fun. If you can position or you can justify drafting a Porygon-Z, you should try it out. It's a lot of fun. Next up is Gallade. I think Gallade is better than Lucario. I don't know if that's a hot take, but I think this guy's way better. I think it's a little bit bulkier, especially on the Spit side. So you find more opportunities to SD or Agility if you need to. I think it's a better Scarfer. I think it's better with a band. Sharpness was such a big breath of life into this Pokemon. Before, I was like, Gallade was here to Mega Evolve into Mega Gallade, which we'll talk about here in a second. But now, it's a bona fide good Pokemon on its own. It absolutely smokes teams. A really, really strong Pokemon. Great as a Terra Captain, too. Then we have Mega Gallade. I'm putting this guy at the top S tier. This is debatably one of the best Draft League Pokemon ever. Incredibly bulky, incredibly strong, ridiculously strong, very, very fast, incredible move pool. It is so simple and easy to use. You come in, you click Close Combat, Zen Headbutt, Knockoff. Only 3 coverage moves you really need. Obviously, you have other niche options, really it's the only coverage moves you need. You can be Bulk Up, you can be SD, and you get crazy options like Will-O-Wisp. You can be a Taunt variant, you could be an Encore variant. I'm pretty sure it gets Encore. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure it gets Encore. You could even wish if you want to. Not that it's great, but you can even wish. You get Shadow Sneak as priority to pick off like a weakened Dragapult that would come in and revenge you or something like that. So you have X-Scissor if you want to go that instead of Knockoff because you're expecting a Colbur Bear. You have the Elemental Punches. I mean, there's really nothing that Mega Gallade cannot do. There really is nothing this Pokemon can't do. It's absolutely incredible. Man, we have a lot of things to rank in this row. Like, there's so many Pokemon that need to be ranked in this row. We're going to go a little bit more rapid fire with a couple of these, alright? Because a couple of them are pretty self-explanatory, especially when you get to the Rotoms. We're going to go, like, rapid fire for the Rotoms. Rotoms into the Lake Trio is pretty funny, actually. Probopass, unfortunately, going to go in D tier. Not a great Pokemon. I've seen it do okay with Terra, but just kind of middling. Bad defensive typing for defensive Pokemon. Next, Dusknoir, another Pokemon, not very good. Stat spread is kind of mediocre. It's not as strong as you'd want it to be. If it was stronger, it would be a good Pokemon, but it's pretty damn weak, unfortunately. What is it, like a base 100 attack or something like that? Look at that dude's arms, and look at his chest. He needs to be stronger. Frostlass. Frostlass is definitely a really solid Pokemon. We're going to go ahead and put this guy in the top of C tier, probably. Great Spiker in past gens. It can go physical or special. You triple out, so Poltergeist or Shadow Ball Ice Beam. It gets Ice Shard priority, T-Bolt, Will-O-Wisp, Destiny Bond, Taunt. Great support options, as well as being a great Spiker. A ridiculously good Spiker. Rotom round. Which Rotom is worst? We're gonna go from worst to best, right? They all have similar good qualities. The only big difference is gonna be their defensive typing, and their signature move that they get. I think that Rotom Fan is probably Rotom Fridge is probably the worst. It's one of the best offensively. Electric plus Ice is really good offensively, but it's Blizzard, so it's unreliable. And on top of that, Ice is a bad defensive type. So I think that's definitely going to be the worst. I think then we have Rotom Spook. It's a little bit faster, but it's still not bulky, or it's not bulky at all. Pure Ghost definitely isn't as good. No signature move, but decent low tier Pokemon that we can pick up. Then we have Rotom Fan, not too far ahead of it. Despite having a useless ability and Levitate, Air Slash is a good signature move. Reliable, hits often, and is a cool secondary stab option. And Electric and Flying is an incredible defensive typing. Really, really solid defensive typing. Absolutely love it. Then we have Rotom Mow, my personal favorite, but in my opinion, probably the third best one. I absolutely love this thing. It is a water massacre. If you have a team that really struggles with bulky waters, whether it be switching into them or killing them, Rotom is going to be great at doing so. It has really free Volt switches, just like Rotom Mow or Rotom Wash, because of the fact that grounds can't come in because we Leaf Storm them in the face and absolutely nuke through them. Rotom Heat, really solid defensive typing. Fire and Electric is really solid offensively as well. Not much switches into that combination. Volt switches around for relatively free. A lot of grounds still don't want to take it on. And then Rotom Wash, I think, has to go up here. And debatably S tier. I'm going to put it at the top of A tier. I could be tripping, but again, one of the most... Over the course of generations, what I see is an S tier Pokemon. I'm going to say no. But I think it definitely deserves top A tier, maybe bottom of S tier. One of the most reliable pivots of all time. Water plus Electric with a ground immunity is an unbelievable defensive typing. Unbelievable defensive typing. Really strong offensively in some instances. Not as strong as Electric and Grass and Electric and Fire, but still very good. And is just the best defensively, and that's what these Rotoms are typically going to be used for and draft for. So I think it's very solid regardless. Then we have the Lake Trio. We're going to do Lake Trio best, best or least or worst to best. We're going to start with Mesprit. Now, keep in mind, I think all of these Pokemon are incredible. I think they're all B tier Pokemon minimum. I'm going to go ahead and put Mesprit here in B tier. It's kind of like Jack of all trades, master of none in this trio, but is great offensively, it's great defensively. It's the only one with Ice Beam, which pisses me off. The others should get Ice Beam. But whether it be Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, Stealth Rocks, just a U-turning variant, Scarf. It's great with Terra, great without Terra. It's just a really solid Pokemon overall. Really, really do enjoy it. Azelf is also going to go in B tier, though. This is the offensive variant. It's a fast rocker. It booms, it taunts, it nasty plots, it U-turns around. This is the guy who comes in and clicks buttons. He's unbelievably strong, very frail, harder to use and justify drafting, but has a crazy ceiling. And then my next one is going to be Big Uxie. Uxie is going to go up here, probably in A tier, probably above Togekiss. Another Pokemon. There's some of these Pokemon that, like, I can't decide whether or not I want to put them in S tier and things like that. We're going to keep Uxie in A. Very reliable. No reliable recovery, which is a little bit tough, but is as reliable as a rocker as you can get. As reliable as a knockoff Spammer, U-turn, T-Wave, Yawn. It does what it needs to do. It encores, it taunts. It's so good at its job. And that's just being annoying. Getting up rocks, U-turning around, being a pivot, and as not fun as that can, like, sound, as, like, boring of a job as it can sound, it's a very important one, and it does it freaking well. Alright, we're kind of getting through these now. It looks we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more Pokemon, because we're not counting, like, the Uber Ubers. Next up, we have Heatran. Heatran is definitely going to go up here in S tier for me. I am a Heatran stan to the day I die. Defensively incredible. Fire plus Seal with a fire immunity is really good. We also have Flame Body to bait burn something, which is great. Really reliable rocker. Taunt and Agma Storm sets really bully and massacre fat teams. And then like in Generation 8, we have like the Scarf and Specs Eruption sets that were Breaker Incarnate and ridiculously strong. I also think this Pokemon's very good with Terra. Terra Grass, Terra Water, Terra Fairy, things like that. Making it solid defensively and giving it more offensive coverage, which is really, really cool. So big Heatran, big ups to that guy. I love him. I think he's great. Regigigas is not great. We're going to go ahead and put this guy really low. Probably like right here, I guess. Cool cool stats and cool move pool, but the worst ability in Pokemon. So he just unfortunately has to go that low. Next up, we have Cresselia. I'm going to put Cresselia in B tier. I'm not a big Crest fan. I think it's very passive and very exploitable. But I think Keegan might fly through my computer screen and rip my head off if I say it's a C tier Pokemon. I don't think you can say it is too. It is a Pokemon that gives a lot of people a lot of issues. I personally think that it's like a big noob killer, but I think there's value in having a big noob killer one, right? And really, really punish people who don't build for it correctly and prepare for it. It is one of those Pokemon where if you don't prepare for it correctly, it is going to just beat you. So I guess that's valuable in its own right? Fion is going to go down here in D tier. Really, really not good. It's just worse Manaphy, but Manaphy is going to go up here in S tier. I love me some Manaphy. I think this guy's awesome. Whether it be in Generation 6, 7, 8, where it was just like Tail Glow and Calm Mind, or Generation 9, where it got Take Heart, which is incredible. I think Terra Manaphy is very underexplored in the showdown scene right now, too. I have not seen it really anywhere. And I think it would be really, really solid. I think it struggles a little bit in Generation 9 right now because of just general power creep. And 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, or 100 across the board. I don't even know if I did it 6 times. 100 across the board isn't the bulkiest or the strongest or the fastest anymore. So I feel like I can get overwhelmed. I think on the right team, Manaphy can really thrive. And in past generations, it's always been incredible. And Pure Water as a typing is still really freaking good. So something to keep in mind. Big Darkrai. We can finally rank Darkrai because he is now allowed everywhere. So we're going to go ahead and put Darkrai here up at pretty high in S tier. I'm going to put it behind Garchomp. I'm going to put it ahead of Garchomp. I think Gallade is debatably one of the best draft league Pokemon ever, so we're going to put Darkrai behind it. Darkrai is allowable now. I think that's valid. It's not broken. However, to say that it's not good is when people go too far, and I think they're a bit ridiculous with that. I think this Pokemon's incredible, whether it be offensively or with more support sets like Will-O-Wisp and Taunt and things like that. It's really bulky still, right? Like, it's still a legendary Pokemon with really, really bulky natural stats, and it's really, really annoying for a lot of teams to deal with. I absolutely love this guy. I think he's really solid, and I think people kind of discount him a little bit too much. They went from, like, he's too broken to allow to he's allowable now, which means he's bad, and I think that's a little bit ridiculous, so we're going to put Darkrai in S tier here. And then lastly, we got Big Shaman. I'm personally going to put Shaman here in B tier. I love Shaman. A lot of people hate Shaman, but I love it. I love it as a pivot. I love it as a status absorber. I love it as a healing Wishmon. And I love it offensively. Seed Flare plus Earth Power and Dazzling Gleam and Air Slash. Like, the coverage that it gets is solid. And I've seen Terra Shaman do really, really well in a ton of leagues. So I think that's a cool option that people underexplore. I love Leech Seed sets. I love Synth sets. I think it's a really good Pokemon that people really sleep on a lot of the time. So, great Pokemon overall. And yeah, that's gonna be the tier list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me make it a little bit bigger just so you guys can see. At the end has like Magnezone and Wormadam, I guess. It's the only Pokemon that were cut off. There you go. It's a little bit better of a end picture. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you would have changed everything about this tier list, let me know in the comments because that drives engagement and makes my videos do better. So I'd appreciate it a ton. I appreciate you walking again, or watching. No, not walking. I appreciate you watching the video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to drop a like, drop a comment, sub if you haven't, and I'll see you guys next week for Gen 5. Already moving through halfway.